Out here, the West ain't just dust and gun smoke, it is blood, betrayal, and legends carved in iron. These are the forgotten tales of outlaws, lawmen, and drifters chasing gold, vengeance, and redemption. Welcome to Dust and Iron Tales. Drywater Gulch was a ghost of a town, whispers of its past drowning in dust and regret. The sun sank low over cracked, dirt-ridden streets as Sheriff Elias Crow sat on the splintered porch of what once was a lively saloon, now just a hollowed-out relic choking on shadows. The wind carried the scent of sage and shattered dreams, and somewhere in the dim interior, a frail voice from a dying man broke the silence. It was James Hart, a prospector with trembling hands and blood-stained palms, clutching a crumpled map as his life slipped away. Hart's lips moved barely, whispering bitterly, "Follow the Widowmaker's shadow," before his eyes went glassy, and he collapsed face first onto the saloon floor. Elias crouched down, eyes scanning the ragged parchment that bore strange symbols and jagged lines. The map looked torn, from nightmares marked with a jagged black line that crossed treacherous terrain, ending at a place called Widowmaker Canyon. The shadows deepened as dusk cloaked the town, and Elias' sense of purpose sharpened. From the corner of the room, a figure stepped forward, her face dirt-streaked and fierce. Maria Vega, her eyes burning with desperation, her hands clutching a tattered wrist, demanded, "That map is all I got left to save my family, land. It is worth more than gold, Sheriff. I need to find it." But before Elias could answer, an outsider listened silently nearby, his silhouette dark against the waning light. Silas Kane, a notorious outlaw with a crooked grin, had overheard enough. He was a man who'd been chasing legends and riches longer than most, and his eyes gleamed when he scented duplicitous intent. Silas approached, voice low and gravelly. "Figured I'd tag along. Seems like we all got a stake somehow." His hand brushed the butt of a battered revolver. "Anything that Roy's worth a man's soul, or so I hear." Elias hesitated, weighing the risks. "This trail is cursed as hell, and we don't know what is waiting for us. But I am not leaving Hart's last words behind." Maria nodded solemnly. "Then let us move before the heat of dawn. No more wasting time." Asterisk, the trio set out into the wasteland, a blistering sun beating down on cracked earth and brittle sagebrush. The desert was relentless, swallowing their shadows as they pushed forward with weary legs and heavy hearts. Shadows flickered across the dunes, rattlesnakes glinting like silver knives hidden beneath the sand. The silence was punctuated only by the distant yelp of coyotes and their own ragged breathing. By nightfall, dehydration clawed at them, and suspicion grew like thorns among the group. Elias kept his hand near his gun, wary of Silas slipping into games of treachery. Maria's hope was flickering, her face etched with worry not just for herself, but for her kin. One night, around a dying campfire, Maria recounted the legend of Widowmaker Canyon. Her voice was hushed, reverent. "It is said the outlaw called himself the Widowmaker killed his own gown for the gold hidden deep in the canyon, only to be betrayed by the woman he loved. That betrayal cost him his life, and his spirit still haunts the place." Elias looked into the flickering flames, his jaw clenched. "Legends or not, I've seen enough men lose their souls chasing shadows." Silas smirked. "Legends make for good stories, Sheriff. The only thing real here is what is waiting at the end of the canyon. The goal, if we re fortunate and if we re brave enough." Asterisk, dawn broke in a wash of sacred gold as they reached the mouth of Widowmaker Canyon. Its cliffs rose like blackened teeth against the pale sky, shadows dancing beneath overhangs where unseen spirits whispered secrets. Echoes of betrayal and blood hung in the air. They descended into the dark maw, the narrow passage twisting and turning in an infinite loop of fear. Deep within, veins of cursed gold shimmered beneath a layer of dirt and bone. Skeletons littered the tunnels, abandoned harbingers of greed's deadly toll. Hidden among the debris, the trio found the mindless heart, a chamber filled with shimmering veins that seemed to pulse with malevolent life. Suddenly, Silas betrayed them. His shape flickered in the shadows as he drew a pistol and fired, aiming to seize the treasure for himself. "You're refooling yourself if you think I share," Silas snarled, eyes cold with greed. "This belongs to me now." Elias and Maria dove for cover, a chamber collapsing behind Silas as a cursed gold triggered a cave-in, sealing his fate and fulfilling the legend's curse. Dust billowed, and a deafening dust billowed, and a deafening roar echoed through the narrow canyon as the earth itself seemed to swallow Silas Kane whole. Rocks tumbled like fractured teeth, sealing his treacherous greed inside the dark womb of the canyon's belly. Elias and Maria spun away just in time, clutching each other, hearts pounding as the ground cracked and groaned above the chaos. The cursed gold gleaming veins of distorted riches lay silent now beneath a mountain of broken stone, cursed forever to trap the devil in. Breathing ragged, Elias stared at the jagged entrance of the sealed mine, shadows dancing across his face in the flickering firelight. "There's some treasures," he whispered, voice hoarse with relief and despair. "Ain't he meant to see the dawn?" The echo of Silas' screed still lingered in the stones, a warning etched in the very bones of the earth. Maria's eyes welled with tears, her hands trembling as she held her little brother close, the weight of desperation pressing down on her shoulders. All our lives, it was just a dream, she murmured. Lucky to walk out of that curse alive and free. Her voice cracked, tinged with a bitter kind of hope. Elias looked away from the wreck, the shadows of the canyon stretching long into the night. Ain't he no prize worth losing your soul, he said quietly. That gold has got a curse heavier than any steel shackle. They moved away from the collapsed entrance, stepping into the cold night, silent but haunted. Elias, eyes fixed on the horizon, knew the story of the Widowmaker's curse was true legendary, blood-chilling, etched into the very spirit of the frontier. Somewhere deep inside the cursed canyon, the ghost of the outlaw lingered, betrayed and slain by the love he trusted most. Maria looked toward the flickering stars, her voice barely a whisper. That legend is just a reminder. Greed ruins men more than any outlaws. We were lucky to walk out alive, Elias. He nodded, the weight of truth heavy on his shoulders. Ain't he no treasure worth more than a life worth living, he said, looking at her with a strange steadiness. We all burn that map tonight. Let the devil as gold stay buried. As they trudged away, the fiery glow of the collapsed mine faded into the darkness, leaving only whispers of greed and ghosts behind. Somewhere in the shadows, the spirit of the Widowmaker watched, silent and eternal, his revenge sealed deep beneath the cursed earth. In the cold silence that followed, Elias pulled the blood-stained map from his pocket and sterilized his hand trembled as he drew the faded, blood-stained parchment from his coat. The paper crackled faintly beneath his grip, the fiery glow of the dying sunset casting long shadows across his face, grim and withered, like the land they'd travelled. His eyes flaked over the torn edges and smeared ink, the ghostly promise of death intertwined with ghostly gold. He stared long and hard, the weight of all they'd endured pressing down like the desert sun. Tears blurred his view, but he knew what had to be done. With deliberate, almost regretful movements, he rolled the map into a tight coil and lifted it above the flames in his hands. Some treasures ain't he meant to be found, he murmured, voice hoarse but steady, watching the crimson lick the paper at its edges. The blaze devoured all but ashes and smoke, a fitting end to a journey soaked in blood and betrayal. Maria Vega stood nearby, her face streaked with dirt and sweat, her eyes thoughtful and hollow. She clenched her fists, knowing that chasing the gold had almost cost her everything, her family, her land, her life, her soul. But she felt a strange relief, like a weight lifting from her shoulders. Silas Kane watched from the shadows, silent but smouldering with unspent anger. His jaw clenched as he saw the flames consume the promises of riches, the dreams of power. Yet beneath his bravado, the seed of wrath grew, fierce and unyielding. Elias took a slower step back, watching the map turn to ash beneath the desert sky, the wind whispering secrets only the canyon secrets knew. Somewhere in the shadows, the spirit of the Widowmaker watched, silent and eternal, his revenge sealed deep beneath the cursed earth. In the cold silence that followed, Elias pulled the blood-stained map from his pocket and stared at it long and hard. He knew this wasn't just about gold anymore, not for him. It was about the ghosts that haunted it, the sins buried beneath the rocky surface. Maria looked over, her voice low and steady. That curse we should be known it was more than just legend. Elias nodded, eyes flickering to the horizon, where the canyon mouth yawned into darkness. Some stories are meant to swallow you whole. They turned away from the mouth of Widowmaker Canyon, each knowing that the real rewards were the lives saved, sins left behind. Yet the wind carried a faint, ghostly whisper, as if the land itself mourned the greed that had brought them so close to oblivion. With every step away, the sense hung heavy, silence where once there had been hope, shadows where there once had been dreams. History had its weight heavy as the stones beneath their feet, and just as unyielding. The outlaw's legend, the widow's curse, the men's redemption all etched into the dust, whispering still in the breath of the canyon winds. Somewhere, in the eternal darkness, the spirit of the Widowmaker watched and waited. Elias finally broke the silence, voice steady yet haunted. Some treasures weren't meant for this world. We were better off leaving them buried. Warrior nodded slowly, her resolve solidifying. But I swear, no matter how tempted, I'll never come back. Silas Kane's shadow lingered longest, a subtle promise to himself one day he'd claim what is his. But not today. Today he'd walk away with nothing, holding the bitter taste of defeat in his mouth. And as they disappeared into the night, the canyon's echoes swallowed their footsteps, echoing the tale of greed and redemption. Somewhere deep beneath, the curse of the Widowmaker remained unbroken, silent in death, watching in endless patience. The legend was done, but the land remembered, and so, perhaps, did the spirit it had sidelined. A legend that would wait forever for the next fool brave enough to chase the shadow of the Widowmaker's scope. The wind howled like a morning banshee as Elias Crow watched the dying town of Drywood got frayed into a memory smudged by dust and betrayal. The Selene's flickering oil lamp cast flickering shadows over the limp form of the prospector, his fingers weakly clutching a crumpled, blood-stained piece of parchment. Crowe's eyes narrowed. The man's lips was strained and faint, and then he whispered, "Follow the Widowmaker." A shadow, then came silence, the kind that crushes bone and dulls senses. Crowe's gut clenched. As he knelt beside the fallen miner, the smell of copper blood mingled with old whiskey and desperation. Outside, the town's last breath lingered, the merchants shuttering their doors, horses stamping restlessly in the dust-streaked streets. The prospector's eyes fluttered shut, and with his dying breath, he had given a curse and a clue. Crowe carefully slid the map from the man's stiff fingers, eyes scanning every crooked line, every ominous marking that hinted at the unholy promise buried beneath the desert sun. From down the alley, a voice like dried leather spoke sharply. "That's all you'll get, Sheriff," came Maria Vega, her eyes dark with hunger, her face smudged with dirt and grief. "The gold is gonna save my land. My family's future is riding on that cursed metal." Crowe looked up, doubt flickering in his eyes. "What does it matter if it is cursed? It is just metal, Maria. Gold can bleed." She shot him a bitter glance. "You don't know what they took from us, what I do sell for promise of peace." Her voice cracked, trembling with silent pain. Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind them, soft, deliberate outlaws, silent shadows slipping through the dusk. Crowe's hand hovered near his gun, but in that moment, a rough voice cut through the tension. "Least of all in a hell like this. I heard you talk, Maria. That gold ain't gonna come without a fight." Sears Kane, outlaw king of the plains, grinned crookedly under his weathered hat. His eyes gleamed like a blade in the dark. "Well, Sheriff, seems we were all looking for something out here. Why don't we settle up and go fetch that cursed map, huh? Nothing like a little risk to make a man feel alive." And just like that, an uneasy alliance was forged. Maria, driven by desperation, Elias, haunted by his past crimes, Sears only out for himself. The desert stretched before them, a burnt horizon of endless hardship. The dead man's trail was no mercy. The blistering sun seared their skin, their supplies dwindled alongside their hope. Rattlesnakes coiled hidden beneath the cracked earth, their flickering tails promising death. Apache scouts watched from the shadows, their eyes inscrutable and deadly, while water ran low and tempers flared like the sun beating down on weary bones. Each night, suspicion grew thicker than the dust. Marie kept her distance, cautious of Sears' schemes, while Elias warred with his conscience, truth or treachery, survival or salvation. When the stars emerged, they called like cast along, ghostly shadows that flickered like memories of fallen comrades. At Widowmaker Canyon, the land itself seemed to breathe with a morbid patience. Walls of jagged rock soared into the grey sky, black as soot, whispering stories of betrayal and death. Maria knelt by where the legend carved into the stone, her voice trembling as she recounted it, an outlaw named Widowmaker who betrayed his gang for gold, only for his lover to shoot him dead beneath the blood-red moon. His spirit, they said, haunted this canyon waiting for a thief to claim his doom. They pressed onward, uncovering the hidden mouth of a mine and entrance cloaked in shadow, carved into the side of the canyon's jagged face. Inside, skeletons littered the dirt floor, rusted pickaxes and broken tools strewn about like broken promises. The veins of cursed gold shimmered beneath the dirt, flickering like the ghostly remnants of a dream-turned nightmare. Sears' greed finally broke loose. His fingers curled greedily around handfuls of glittering ore until the earth groaned ominously beneath him. A sudden collapse buried him alive, dust choking the air as the mine sealed its cursed bounty with a terrible vengeance. Elias and Maria, battered but alive, scrambled free from the wreckage, their eyes wide with the horror of what they deemed nearly unleashed. Their escape felt like salvation. Life was worth more than gold, they agreed in silent despair. As the dust settled, Elias cast the blood-stained map into the flickering fire they managed to ignite, flames licking at the charred edges of the parchment, curling black as burnt whiskey. The night breathed heavy around them, shadows swallowing the remnants of the forsaken mine. Elias watched the flames dance, their glow illuminating the grim resolve etched into his face. He squatted beside Maria, who was wiping dirt and sweat from her brow, eyes staring into the flickering blaze. "Some treasures ain't meant to be found," he muttered, voice grubbly and stripped bare like the land itself. Maria nodded slowly, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Ain't no amount of gold worth more than a life." Sears Kane, scrushed and cursing under his breath, had slipped away into the darkest moments before his betrayal, leaving behind a hollow chill that settled into their bones like the desert cold. The treacherous man was gone, probably heading back the way they came, clutching whatever bits of cursed gold he could salvage. If only they'd gotten to him first. The ruins of the mine, now sealed in a collapsing avalanche, were a testament to legend and curse alike. Skeletons twisted, blackened, clung to rock like ghouls, the cursed veins of gold shimmering beneath their brutal forms. The air still reeked of death and greed, a reminder of what had transpired in that cursed hollow. There is no telling what would be happened if we stayed longer, Maria whispered, voice trembling with relief and horror. The Widowmaker's ghost would be claimed us too. Elias looked at her, eyes haunted. Maybe that is what he wanted. To keep folks away so what happened to us might never be told. They began a slow crawl back across the mountain's edge, stone shifting underfoot and every gust of wind whispering warnings from beyond the grave. The canyon's haunting legend echoed in his mind the outlaw who shot his own men, betrayed by a lover, buried in the depths of Widowmaker's shadow. For all their fears, that place was cursed with the weight of longing and blood. As they finally reached the cracked, sun-bleached plains, Elias caught sight of the distant Tom Drywater Gulch, little more than a collection of battered shacks and dust, but still a promise of safety, if only fleeting. He pulled Maria close as they moved through the wilderness, her face lined with dirt and hope alike. No gold that's worth this, he muttered, voice thick with regret. Next time, I'd rather chase a sunset than a ghost story. She chuckled softly, almost bitter. And yet, some of us are too damn stubborn to walk away from what is chasing us. In the silence that followed, a lone coyote howled somewhere beyond the hill, its cry piercing the night like a warning. Shadows stretched long over the land, and beneath those shadows, the legend lingered the Widowmaker's curse, silent but unyielding. When they finally crossed the edge of town at dawn, tired and battered, Elias threw the charred remnants of the map into the dying embers of the campfire. It crackled and hissed a final confession that the greatest treasure was always just beyond reach. He looked to Maria, her eyes glinting with resilience. Some treasures are cursed from the start, and some ain't worth losing your soul over. Her face softened, a fleeting smile crossing her cracked lips. Then I reckon we re-rich in a way money never could buy. As the sun peeked over the horizon, casting a weary cold glow on the barren land, Elias turned away, leaving the flames to die down to ash. He thought of the canyon, the skeletons, the cursed gold things best forgotten. Yet, deep in his gut, he knew that legend wasn't he done whispering. Some shadows never fade, and the ghost of the Widowmaker would wait, forever hungry for the next fool to stumble headlong into his cursed domains. And so, with no more than hope and the scars of what they survived, they rode into the dawn two souls alive, haunted by their own greed, carrying the memory of the Widowmaker's gold, a legacy of blood and lost chances that refused to die quiet. The crimson dawn bled across the rocky outcroppings of Widowmaker Canyon, casting jagged shadows that seemed to stretch like claws over the dying landscape. Elias Crow's horse pawed at the dirt, nostrils flaring as he stared into the swirling mist that clung to the canyon's throat. His hand still trembled from holding the blood-stained map, its paper ragged from the struggle and greed that brought them here. Maria Vega sat stiff in her saddle, eyes distant, clutching her shield tied around her shoulders, a quiet warning of the storm brewing inside her. Silas Kane, lean and hawk-eyed, smirked as he nudged his horse closer, lips pressed in a thin line, already sizing up the next score. This place, Elias muttered, voice hoarse enough to crack, it has buried more than gold. It has buried secrets. Blood ones. Maria's voice broke through, soft but firm. The legend is true. The Widowmaker killed his own gang, betrayed his lovers, for what he thought was riches. And now, no one who seeks his cursed gold lives to tell it. Silas chuckled darkly. I don't take care about curses. Only what I can carry out of here. That gold is worth 1,000 men's souls, and I got no plan on leaving empty-handed. The silence thickened, broken only by the distant cry of a hawk circling like death itself. As they descended into the canyon's depths, the oppressive air grew heavy, an echo of restless spirits and buried sins. Every shadow seemed alive, whispering secrets of the past. Maria clutched her cross, her knuckles white, feeling the weight of her family as land hope threaded with despair. The narrow trail twisted like a serpent, stones slipping under their horses' hoofs. Shadows pressed closer, and the wind carried a whisper, full of the Widowmaker, a shadow faint but persistent, insidious in its promise. Elias tightened his grip on his rifle, scanning the darkness, feeling the unseen gaze. Night fell with a howl. They made camp near a jagged outcrop, fire flickering against the unseen specters lurking nearby. Suspicion grew like poison between them. Maria watched Silas roll a cigarette, her eyes narrowing. Elias saw his reflection in the embers red, haunted, seeking redemption. Why are you really here, Kane? Elias asked, voice low. It isn't just the gold, is it? The keen eyes, Silas rolled, voice slick. Way. I am just a man looking for his share. Same as you, Sheriff. Only difference is I am willing to take what is rightfully mine. Maria looked between them, clutching her rosary, trembling. She broke the silence. We were all searching for something. But some treasures cost more than they were worth. The Widowmaker's gold is cursed. My grandmother used to say the hills bleed for what is taken from them. Morning came slow, heavy with the promise of danger. The trio pressed onward until they reached the mouth of a cavern covered in ancient carvings, symbols of death and defiance. Inside, the walls shimmered with veins of cursed gold, glittering beneath their lanterns like a siren's promise. Bones littered the cavern floor, skeletons ensnared in rusted chains, their hollow eye sockets staring into the void. Maria sank to her knees, whispering a prayer, her voice trembling. This is the lair of legends, and the end of those who sought more than they could carry. Suddenly the ground trembled, silence shattered there, a deafening cave-in. Silas's face twisted in rage. Every man for himself, he yelled, shoving past Maria and Elias. He darted toward a shimmering vein, aiming to claim the cursed gold for himself. Elias drew his pistol, but the collapse sealed the cavern behind them, trapping Silas amidst the rubble. As dust settled, the remaining two faced the truth. The legend was real. The widow's spirit surged, silent and watchful, claiming his final victims. With no options left, Elias and Maria scrambled through the rubble, their lives hanging by a thread. Outside, the canyon echoed with a haunting wind that felt like a morning song. The spirit of the Widowmaker watched, ever waiting, forever hungry. They reached the canyon's edge as darkness claimed the sky once more. Elias threw the bloodstained map into the flickering flames of the campfire, watching it curl and blacken. Some treasures ain't meant to be found, he said quietly, voice thick with exhaustion. Maria nodded, tears streaking her face. Let us leave this cursed place behind before it claims us too. As they rode away into the dawn's first light, the shadows of Widowmaker Canyon lingered impossibly silent, but still watching. Wait, the sun barely broke the horizon when Elias Crow kicked his horse into a slow, deliberate walk, the dust rising in ghostly plumes behind him. His face, weathered by years of hardship, was pulled tight, a worn mask of resolve and regret. Maria Vega followed close, her eyes haunted but steady beneath a battered brim, her hands clenched tightly on the reins. Silas Kane rode just behind, smirking like a man who'd already counted the gold in his mind, even if it was only a burning hope flickering like a ghost in his chest. They crossed the cracked earth of the desert, the air thick with the smell of sage and scorched earth, each step forward carrying the weight of what they did, lost and what they stood to gain. As the landscape stretched into endless undulation, shadows of distant mesas etched a silent foreboding into the horizon. Death seemed to sleep beneath the sands here, rattlesnakes curled in rocks, and every few miles a dry, abandoned carcass told tales of those who'd gone seeking fortune and vanished. Night fell in a hush as they camped beneath a lone cottonwood that sagged like an old man's spine. That is when suspicion crept in. Maria, sitting by the fire, looked across at Silas, her voice slow and sharp. What are you really after, Kane? Gold or glory? He chuckles, voice gravelly. Ain't he about no glory, Maria? Just a man looking to see his face in a pile of gold for once. That is all. Elias, lying with his coat pulled tight around him, sat bolt upright at that eyes flickering between the two. Keep your tongue, Kane. We all got motives, but greed is a fire that'll burn anyone down in its path. The night this silence was thick with unspoken threats. Wilderness or no, menaced shadows grew longer when trust ebbed. They pressed on the next day, crossing through jagged canyon walls, where the wind whispered tales of the past. Maria, her voice trembling slightly, shared the legend of the Widowmaker, an outlaw who, driven mad by greed, murdered his own gang to claim a treasure buried deep in the canyon's Blackmore. Betrayed by his lover, shot down in a final act of treachery, and cursed to haunt his own horde for eternity. They reached the mouth of Widowmaker Canyon at twilight, the setting sun bleeding gold and blood across the jagged edge. Inside, the air grew colder, heavier, a sense of foreboding overtaking hope. Shadows danced on the ancient stone walls, and in the flickering of their lanterns, soul and blood seemed to shimmer together. Maria took a deep breath, voice trembling as she pointed to a narrow opening. This is it. The mine is hidden in the heart of the canyon. The legend is true, cursed gold and skeletons, all of it. We find what we came for. But beware, the spirit of the Widowmaker still roams these holes. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife, yet they pressed inside, each step echoing strangely against the silence. The bones crunched beneath their boots, the stench of death lingering like a spectre. There, amidst the fallen, they uncovered the veins of gleaming gold, tainted with corruption, the cursed treasure that had drawn so many into its grip. But treachery erupted like a gunshot in the quiet. Silas, his eyes wild, pulled a pistol and aimed it at Elias and Maria. Thought I'd let you take all the glory. Think again. Gold, that's mine now. Maria's voice cracked with rage and horror. You were a snake, Kane. We were fools to trust you. But before she could react, the mine suddenly rumbled, a deafening roar as the earth cracked and collapsed, trapping Seal. The dust uproar washed over them like a vengeful wave, silence falling heavy and oppressive just seconds later, leaving only the slow trickling drip of loose debris mocking the stillness. Elias' eyes widened in disbelief, all hopes of escape dangling by a thread as the mountain topples into chaos, swallowed by ancient creed awakened beneath her feet. Maria's breath caught in her throat, her face a mask of shock and fury. She stared at the collapsing gloom where Silas Kane had been standing mere moments before, now buried beneath a tomb of rubble and shattered dreams. God damn it, she whispered, voice trembling, clutching her shawl tight around her shoulders, fighting the tremor in her hands. That bastard, he has done this. Elias drew his revolver in a blur of steel, eyes darting around the falling stones. K&S' only interest was that cursed gold, he said grimly. And now, none of us gets to walk away with it, least of all him. The canyon echoed with the distant crack of earth, as if the mountain itself was signing relief or perhaps warning them of further wrath. Dust filled the air, particles shimmering in the waning light like ghostly remnants of greed itself. Elias thought of the legend of the Widowmaker's curse and wondered if the spirits of betrayal and bloodshed still clung to these cursed veins of gold. Maria pulled herself from her trance, her face streaked with dirt and tears. "We gotta get out of here," she rasped, voice hoarse. "It is falling apart, and so am I, but we're alive, we can let this be for nothing." Elias nodded. "Then move fast." They scrambled over jagged rocks, dodging falling debris, every step hammered with the knowledge that time was against them, but the mountainous fury was still unleashed. As they navigated the chaos, Elias kept a wary eye on the shadows just shattered like glass. Maria's eyes flicked to him, caught in a storm of grief and resolve. "We came for gold," she said softly. "But now I see this coast for what it is mankind as hubris. Before the earth is fury." Suddenly, a huge boulder shifted, blocking the narrow pass. A wall of dirt and stone, fallen from above, sealing their escape. Elias cursed beneath his breath. "We re-trapped," he said, voice low and grim. "The canyon's wrath won't be tamed for long." Maria pulled out an old dagger, her hands trembling but her eyes fierce. "Then we fight," she said, voice edged with defiance. "Whatever is down there, whatever lies beneath these cursed veins, I've seen enough blood and betrayal to know what it'll cost us. Better to die free than chained to greed." Elias' jaw tightened, a rare show of vulnerability. "No," he whispered, "we hold on. We find another way, there's always a way." But the mountain shifted ominously, dust billowing in the darkening sky, signaling that the Widowmaker's curse had only begun to stir. Underneath the oppressive silence, the breath echoed like gunfire in the stillness gradation of life teetering on the edge of ruin. The legend of the canyon, filled with betrayal and blood, proved its worth once more. Yet, within them, a flicker of defiance, bearing the redemption still possible, even here at the edge of the world. And as the last light of day sputtered out behind the hills, Elias looked at Maria with weary resolve. "We be alive," he murmured, voice thick with meaning. "Some stories aren't meant to end in gold, Maria. They were meant to teach us what really matters." As she nodded slowly, clutching her locket tight, her only link to hope. Shadows lengthened, darkness closing in, but the ghosts of greed and guilt still haunted that canyon, whispering promises of riches and ruin. In the silence, Elias threw the blood-stained map into the flickering fire. They managed to kindle an offering to the spirits of the forsaken, warning them that some treasures are better left buried. With a final look toward the cursed mountain, he said, "Some treasures ain't meant to be found," a somber, unshakable truth. The crackling fire cast long shadows over their sweat-streaked faces, revealing the weight of their shed scars, the lost hopes, the broken dreams, the ghostly remnants of the greed that nearly devoured them. Maria Vega's eyes shimmered with hour of relief and regret, the tight-set lines on her face softening just a bit. She reached out, her trembling hand brushing against Elias' as he tossed the blood-stained map into the flames. The paper curled, blackening in the sudden burst of heat. The smell of ash mingled with the dry, dusty air and aroma of finality. Elias' jaw clenched, all the years of regret and regret's heavy toll pressing down on him. "Some treasures," he muttered hoarsely, "ain't meant to be found." His voice was a low prayer carried away by the night wind that had begun to stir, whispering through the broken canyon walls like the voices of those long lost. The mountain loomed behind them, dark and brooding, its jagged silhouette defined by flickering shadows. The legend of the Widowmaker's canyon had etched itself into their minds, the story of a murderous outlaw who killed his own gang for a cursed pile of gold, only to be betrayed and shot by his lover in a final act of madness. Tales whispered by old-timers around campfires, stories that now felt carved into the very stones of the cursed place. Elias rubbed his dusty chin, looking skyward. "We was fools to chase after it. That gold pure curse brings not just death, but madness." Maria nodded slowly. Her hands, once trembling, found steadiness. "We almost paid the price for greed," she said softly. "My land and my children, what is left of us, that is what matters now. Not some cursed metal." Silas Kane had been silent, cloaked in darkness, his eyes flickering with ember-like gleam. Now he finally spoke, voice low and thick with malice. "Why all got what I all wanted for answers, riches, salvation. But me? I got plans. That canyon has got one last treasure, and I aim to claim it, no matter the cost." Elias faced him squarely. "You'd killed to get your hands on that gold, Silas. Think it is worth more than a man or so?" Silas spat, lips curling into a crooked smile. "Gold is the only thing that keeps a man alive out here." You think I care about the damn spirit of some outlaw? This outlaw has got what they'll never take from me, a promise of power. Maria clutched her childish locket tightly. Power is a lie, she whispered. All it leaves behind is blood and regret. As dawn approached, the trio mounted their tired horses, the process of return beginning amid the jagged silence of the canyon. The journey back was even more treacherous, marked by the relentless sun and swirling dust devils. Days bled into nights, just fraying like the edges of an already torn blanket. Beneath the blazing sun, Elias kept a wary eye on sealers, suspicion growing like weeds in cracked earth. Marie pressed on, haunted by the ghost of her father's land, and the false promises of fortunes that lay buried beneath beds of cursed gold. Finally, reaching the outskirts of Drywater Gulch, they felt the oppressive weight of what had transpired settle in their bones. The town looked just as forsaken as when Elias first rode in empty streets, empty promises, a dying ember of hope. Elias looked at Maria, her eyes hollow yet resolute. We did what we could, he said, voice gravelly. But some things aren't worth the dying for. And sailors? Before disappearing into the shadows, he gave them a smoke that could curdle milk. Next time, he whispered bitterly, I'll find my own widow's gold, and no fire or spirits will stop me. Elias watched him fade into the dusk, knowing in his bones that the hunger for gold would never truly die, only evolve. With that understanding, he turned to Maria, offering a hand that was both a measure of trust and a silent apology for the sins they decommitted. Later that night, beneath a sky torn between twilight and darkness, Elias lit a small fire in a potash field of ash and dirt. The bloody map, now blackened and shriveled, was tossed into its flames, a ritual of goodbye, a surrender to the ghosts in the canyon. The fire glow danced across their faces, revealing lines of hardship, hope, and heartbreak. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled a mournful song of the wild, unbound west. The wind picked up again, carrying the whispers of the dead outlaw and those who'd fallen for dreams of gold. Elias stared into the flames and finally whispered, some treasures ain't meant to be found. Lest we leave them buried deep where they can come back to haunt us. Maria pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the steady beat of her heart, a reminder of what mattered most, survival, truth, and the simple redemption of walking away. As dawn crept across the horizon, the canyon seemed to settle into its silence once more, watching them go, silent guardian of stories too dark to tell and sins too deep to forgive. And in that silence, somewhere amid the shifting sands and fading echoes, the spirit of the Widowmaker remained watching, waiting, forever cursed to haunt the shadows of the gold they dared to seek. The sun broke over Widowmaker Canyon in bloodshot streaks, casting long shadows that stretched like the fingers of some unseen menace. Elias Gross staggered against the jagged wall, his breath ragged, sweat and dust smudged across his face. Maria Vega beside him, clutching her satchel tight, looked at the dark mouth of the mine still trembling from what they just escaped. Cedar's cane was already slinking away, a sly glint in his eyes, every step calculated and silent, as if he'd learned to move like a ghost amongst the rocks. Elias coughed, wiping blood from his cracked lips. Some legends ain't just stories, he rasped, voice rough but steady. This Widowmaker rests a curse as much as a ghost. We come here for greed and left with our souls branded. Maria's eyes flicked toward the shadows, her face streaked with dirt and worry. He said, follow the Widowmaker's shadow, she whispered. That was his final breath. I don't believe in curses, but I believe in what I can see. Her voice cracked. We buried his body, but his legend is still alive. That canyon has no place for the living. Elias looked away from the dark maw of the mine as the early light touched its crooked rim. We dug into something no man should poke at. You hear me, Maria? Gold has just wait. The true treasure has mercy if there is any left to find. Their breeze whispered through the canyon's crevices, carrying the scent of old blood and broken vows. Somewhere in that echo, the legend stirred again, whispering to the brave of the foolish. Elias knew it was time to leave not just the canyon, but that cursed legend behind. They turned away, boots kicking loose dirt onto bones and shattered picks, stepping over what remained of the greed and folly that had brought them here. As they climbed the final slope, Elias paused, glancing back at the yawning darkness. Some treasures ain't meant to be found, he muttered, voice low and bitter. And some shadows never die. Maria's stare remained fixed on the mouth of the mine, shadows flickering like the flickering of memory's best left bait. She felt that weight again, the unshakable sense of being watched, of a ghostly eye upon her back. 1,000 whispers seemed to swirl around her, calling her name in the wind, promising ruin or salvation. They reached the canyon's crest as the sun finally broke free of the horizon, casting the rocky walls in a pallid, unforgiving light. Elias pulled the blood-stained map from his pocket, the parchment trembling in his grasp. His eyes hardened with resolve. This is where it ends, he said quietly. Maria stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. I refuse to let greed doom us all. That mine, whatever is left inside it, belongs to the dead now. She looked at Elias with a fragile hope, a glimmer of something better than gold. But Silas Kane reappeared behind them, smirking, clutching a rifle. Wild think had he come this far for truth, he drawled. No, I want the power. The gold is just the bait. And now I got what I came for. His finger curled around the trigger, eyes glittering like a predator. Elias drew his pistol in one fluid motion. Not today, Kane. You want blood? Yeah, I'll find plenty enough in this cannon if you push me. Silas sneered. I got no more use for your morality, Sheriff. You and the widow saw the truth. Some treasures are better claimed by those who ain't afraid to bleed for 'em. Maria threw herself between them, storming forward. You're not taking anything from these bones or from our future. Whatever spirits sit here, they've already claimed enough. But without warning, rocks shifted beneath their feet, the infamous curse rising like an unleashed beast. The earth groaned, collapsing inward, swallowing the foolhardy, bearing secrets in a thunder of dust and broken steel. Silas shouted, trying to fight, but the cannoness wrath had other plans. Elias grabbed Maria's arm, pulling her free just as the collapse sealed the mine's entrance, sealing the greed and treachery inside. The air grew thick with dust and ash, the silence reborn as a warning. They stumbled down the worn trail, hearts pounding, lungs racked with relief yet haunted by the spectre that refused to fade. Elias pulled out the blood-stained map one last time, his hand trembling. Some treasures, he said softly, voice thick with regret, ain't he meant to be found. No matter how bad you want them. He tossed the map into the fire at his side, the flames licking upward, devouring the cursed parchment. Maria watched as the blaze consumed that desperate hope, her gaze